Hello and welcome back to the Puncher's Chance podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the big fight card, Antony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, and the rest of that card, Wembley, Riyadh season. Before we do that, though, we are going to be talking about Canelo Alvarez and his fight and the rest of the fight card over in Vegas. But before we get into all of that, we want you guys to let us know what you think. Daniel Dubois, Antony Joshua, who's going to win? And also which your favourite fight on the card is. But you'll have to stick around to the end of the episode to hear what we have to say about that. Because first, of course, Canelo Alvarez, Edgar Berlanga in Vegas. Canelo, he does it again, realistically. You know, we doubt every time he comes out, you go, are we going to get the same Canelo? And, 66 fights later, we maybe even get a better Canelo. I don't know what you think about it, Harry.
That was the best Canelo Alvarez I think I've seen in 5 fights. We said that this fight didn't mean anything for us. We weren't excited for it, but my God, as the fight week went on, I really got excited for it. And it was one hell of a performance by him. That left hook, wow. And yeah, Edgar Berlanga played his part in the fight. I thought he was really good in areas, but Canelo Alvarez, he just showed why he's a class above. And now he's definitely in that top 5 pound for pound fighters. And the next couple of fights now are going to be very interesting because he could either go down the route of taking 5 more fights and getting 20 million for each fight, or take 2 more fights in his career for legacy. And those legacy fights, for me, are Terence Crawford and the winner of Bivol and Beterbiev. I mean, they're the 2 fights that could define him as one of the greatest boxers of this modern era.
Yeah, like you said, the performance on the weekend really showed why he's in that pound for pound rankings. You've got to give credit to Berlanga. I think he surprised a lot of people. I think he lasted the fight. Like myself with my prediction last week, I didn't have him finishing the fight, so he showed his toughness, and he'll definitely come again. We'll see him in more big fights in the future, and I think that fight against Canelo was really going to hold him in good stead going forward, and he would have learned a lot from that fight. But with the Canelo moving forward now, I can't see him jumping up to light heavyweight or fighting any of the light heavyweights. So I think the winner of Beterbiev and Bivol is out the window. I think Benavidez is out the window. The 2 fights I can see, I think he'd be interested in the Crawford fight with the weight advantage. I think that's a possibility, but it's whether he can work out whether he guessed the fight his way, or is it going to be the other possible fight could be Chris Eubank Jr., because I know he's been talking about that. I think he wanted it next May, and I think that's a possible option for him as well at super middleweight. So yeah, I think one of them 2 were the likely next fight for me.
I think more than anything, that Canelo Berlanga fight was just a really exciting fight in a way I necessarily didn't think it was going to be. I think I said that I thought Canelo was kind of just going to cruise to victory. He wasn't going to really push for a finish. It might be a fairly rudimentary performance, and it was reasonably rudimentary for Canelo. I'm not saying that he wasn't comfortable, but that they were both just talking to each other throughout. There was low blows, there was shots onto the hips, the elbows, just everything, every little kind of dirty trick. And then as soon as that final bell rang, without even a moment, Canelo and Berlanga, big, huge hug, share respects. And the crowd the atmosphere in there seemed really good. It was just like a great fight to watch. And I think for a few fights now, probably since, and maybe even including the Bivol fight, it's kind of been Canelo's been like, well, I'm watching him because he's Canelo, but they're not the most exciting fights in the world, and this, that, and the other. And that was just vintage Canelo. He was so good. A real step above. And actually, I think Berlanga's stock's gone up slightly. I think a lot of people said, why on earth is he fighting Edgar Berlanga? This is such a rubbish fight. And I thought he gave a pretty good showing for himself, equal to someone like Jaime Munguia. Obviously, not the same kind of fight. He wasn't quite so forward. But I think Berlanga did, a really good job at showing for himself. But it's Canelo Alvarez. And like Harry said, that was the best performance we've seen from him in a long time. He is without a doubt probably the guy outside the multiple weight champions in Terence Crawford, Usyk, and Nayo Inoue. So I think for that, you've got to say absolute respect to Canelo. 66 fights later is getting better somehow still. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the next Canelo fight, whoever that may be, whether that is like Ben said, Chris Eubank Jr., or if it's Terence Crawford, or if it's another fight at super middle against someone like Christian and Billy. I just think he's got the pull, he's got the draw, he's one of, if not the biggest name in boxing at the moment. And, what more is there not to like? And we said it last time as well, the undercard on that fight, there were some great fights on there. Ben, I don't know if you have one or two fights in particular that you enjoyed, but I enjoyed catching up on this one in general.
Yeah, I caught up. I watched a couple of highlights on Sunday morning because there was no way I was staying up for it. But like you said, some really entertaining fights on the undercard. Erislandy Lara with a good stoppage win against Danny Garcia. 41 years of age now, and he's still going somehow. But I thought you just broke him down in the end. Danny Garcia, I think that's it for him now. It's probably time to hang up the gloves. But huge respect for him for what he's done in his career. He's had some massive wins, but I think it's just time's caught up with him now. In terms of Lara, I could see him. I don't think he's got many fights left himself at 41. But I think it'd be a very smart option for the potential. We're going to speak about it later, but the potential winner of Sheeraz and Denny on the weekend, if they can get a possible world title, like a vacant world title against him, I think that'd be a smart move. Caleb Plant then as well, getting up off the floor to bounce back and win against Trevor McCumbee, beating him, someone who's never been beaten. So a good win for him. It'd be interesting to see who he moves on to next. And talking about Berlanga, that could be a possible option for him. I'd like to see, a big fight between them two would be interesting. Rolly Romero as well, bounce back. Isaac Cruz, possible rematch there for him to try and avenge that loss. So yeah, it was a good night of boxing. Really, I thought it was really a good few entertaining fights on it.
Yeah, I thought the one that stood out for me was Caleb Plant and Trevor McCumbee. That fight, there was no feeling out process. They just both went at it for 9 rounds or however long it lasted. And like you said there, Caleb Plant against Edgar Berlanga has got all the makings of a great fight. Caleb Plant has bought Edgar Berlanga's website, for God's sake. So there's the narrative, there's the story to put towards the promoters to make it. And yeah, I thought it was interesting, that Garcia performance, because I saw Andy Clark, he said something about it, that he believes that that's it now for Garcia. This fight potentially was just that fight of, I'm just going to go and show people what I've still got. And slowly but surely in that fight found out that he hasn't got it anymore. And he went to the referee, yeah, I'm done, basically. And you can't blame him. He's had a great career. I think Stephen Fulton as well was on the undercard, but he wasn't on the pay-per-view undercard. And I don't think that's was very good, because he just come off a fight with Inoue, going for trying to be great. And yeah, he wasn't on the pay-per-view. But all in all, a decent night of boxing. And these PCB cards, people have a go at them for not putting on constant shows every other week. But when they put on a show, top to bottom, everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, you do talk about it, and that may be because obviously, Canelo Alvarez is often at the top of it, and there's some big fighters on there, but you can't not pay attention, because like we've said, there's some great fights, some great cards, and obviously this one was pay-per-view, but sometimes they're not pay-per-view, and sometimes they're on Amazon Prime, and that's just ideal, because a lot of people, even myself has that kind of subscription with my many ways to watch. So I think, like you say, Caleb Plant was really impressive. Trevor McCumbee, that knockdown on Plant was a flash, really nice knockdown. Plant did well to recover from it. He was obviously taking the piss with the showboating and whatnot, and then it was a pretty ruthless finish. So it was good to watch, a really enjoyable card from top to bottom. And in a weird thing, like Ben pointed out, me and Harry on the Boxing News app drew on points and rounds. So I think we're just gonna have to virtually shake hands and call this one a draw for the first time ever, because or what we can say, I think we'll
go alphabetically.
I don't think we will.
H, S, H is up here and the alphabet, S is down there, so
Oh,
I
what about
think that
surnames though? Obviously, my surname. I think we can all say Ben
all
lost. I
right,
think we
we'll
can say
draw.
that. We
We'll
can
draw.
say
We'll
Ben
draw.
lost, and we'll call that a happy result for everyone involved. Wembley, Riyadh season, Turkey Alalshikh, Wembley Stadium, 95,000 people going to be descending on it for Antony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, or Daniel Dubois versus Antony Joshua. So I suppose it is possibly technically with him having the world title for the IBF World Heavyweight title on the undercard of that. Tyler Denny, Hamzah Sheeraz for the European. Cacace versus Josh Warrington for the IBO World title. Josh Kelly versus Ishmael Davis, a new filler. Joshua Buatsi, Willy Hutchinson for the WBO interim. And Mark Chamberlain fighting Josh Padley as well for another tune-up fight for Mark Chamberlain as he pushes up towards 17-0. What a card. What a fight at the main event. Harry, begin to put into words, how excited you are, how much you're looking forward to this card.
Listen, when we went up to this press conference, what was it? The beginning of July, wasn't it? It was, the build up to it has been incredible. That press conference, there was so much media there, seeing all the fighters facing off, and you look at just the card, they're all main events anywhere else in this country, but they've all been put together on one night. And shout out to Ishmael Davis as well for taking a fight with Josh Kelly on short notice. Obviously wish Beefy the best in the fast recovery, but this card, top to bottom, they're all main events, ain't they? And a lot of them are 50-50s, apart from probably the first fight of the night. But that fight's a sort of fight where it's going to get the crowd going, and then you go into a banger, then another banger, and then another banger, and then the main event just speaks for itself. Because I think when the fight was announced, I was saying, Antony Joshua, easy. Antony Joshua's going to batter him. The closer I've got to fight week, the more I've seen of Dubois, his attitude. He's training at a barn that's literally a couple of 20 miles away from Wembley. You can go outside his barn that he's training in and see the arch of Wembley in the distance. Dubois is going to be up for it. Dubois can hit hard. He's the younger man. He's got nothing to lose. There could be an upset. And but this card, I don't think I've been excited for a card since potentially the 5v5, which is only a couple of months ago.
Yeah, like you said, I'm really excited for it. It's crazy what they can put together with these cards. Like every single fight on this card could headline a bill in the UK on its own, and to top it off with that massive heavyweight clash at the top end is going to be. It is one that the closer you sort of got to it, the more you sort of thinking which way is it going to go, because there seems to be a new version of Dubois that has come out over recent months. But yeah, really looking forward to it now. And just looking at every fight, it's difficult to break down sometimes and try and make out your predictions, because you can think one way, but then you're looking at the fighters and watching the whole build up, the face-offs between the fighters, and it's adding a bit of fire there in each fight. And it's going to be a really, really good night of fights, and very interesting week as well, I think, with everything that they've got planned in the build-up. They've got, I think, after the open workouts, they've got fights there as well on Wednesday or Thursday night. So yes, it's crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I've completely forgot that we're gonna have to do the predictions for this one, and that's just filled me with a sense of dread, because we're gonna get a few wrong, because it's a good card. And just to see, when you see that first fight week face off, Antony Joshua's got AirPod in ear. It's just like, wow, yeah, we're here. This is going to be good. And like you say, though, Daniel Dubois he's not going away anytime soon in terms of that top of the heavyweight picture. He's young. Like everyone says, he's seriously powerful. He's got a good jab. He's got a good team behind him. He's going to be, if you're talking about Antony Joshua fights, it's about as difficult for AJ as it gets without it being Usyk or Fury. And for Daniel Dubois, it's about as big a test as it gets without it being, well, we saw what he did to Usyk. So maybe, an even harder test than that for Daniel Dubois as well. So yeah, it's just, fair play to Riyadh season and to His Excellency Turki Alalshikh, Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, Sauerland, Ben Shalom, everyone that's come together to put this card on. It feels like a celebration of British boxing in a way, because everyone's come together. they've put one or two of their best fighters together to fight and just, entertain us at Wembley or on pay-per-view or, Weatherspoons, depending on your preference or financial situation at the moment. What I think we should do is we should go through every single fight and just give a little bit. We're not going to be here, we're going to try not to have this as a 2-hour episode, but we'll go through fight by fight. Mark Chamberlain versus Josh Padley, lightweight. Like I said, Josh Padley, relative unknown going into this one, came straight from work to the down to the press conference in London, so he's still not full-time Mark Chamberlain. We've obviously seen what Mark Chamberlain can do. Is this a fight where it's just, giving Chamberlain another fight as he works towards those bigger fights, or will Padley cause him a few problems?
I think looking at it, I haven't seen much of Padley, but I've watched a couple of clips of him now over the last few weeks since this fight was announced. It sort of reminds me slightly, this fight, of the Ben Whittaker and Leon Willins fight from a couple of months ago, where Willins was a bit of a, I wouldn't say an unknown because he's a very good fighter, but unknown to most boxing fans probably, and would have looked at the fight as Ben Whittaker was just going to spark him out and get him out of there quickly, and he showed some real ability in there against Whittaker. But I think it'd be similar with Padley this weekend. From what I've seen of him, he sort of likes to fight at a bit of a range. I think he's going to try and keep Chamberlain at the end of his jab for as much as he can of the fight and try and maybe nick rounds. I think that's his best bet going into this weekend. The worry for me is I've seen, from what I've watched of him, he sometimes keeps his hands quite low, which against a fighter like Chamberlain, with how explosive he is as a puncher, worries me. And, well, was he 16-0 with 13 knockouts? So he's a bit of a knockout specialist, and we've seen him finish off fighters and really tough fighters of that. So, yeah, I think it's a chance for him to make himself a superstar, really, and I think it's a win-win situation, really. A chance to fight at Wembley is probably something that may never come around again for him. So, yeah, it's a great opportunity for him, really.
Yeah, listen, Josh Padley, he's gone from fighting in Malta to Ellen Road in one of the suites there. I'm sure Sam's been in there watching Leeds United before. And now he's fighting at Wembley Stadium. And I think for a lot of these fighters on this card, they're going to go from being in a hotel room all day Saturday to then go in with their team to the changing rooms, sitting in their changing rooms for a couple of hours, and then they're going to walk out. And it's just going to be potentially at this time half full, so about 45,000 people are watching you. It's going to be interesting how all these fighters react to that. But yeah, Josh Padley, he's up against Turki Alalshikh's favourite fighter. He's up against it all this week. And every time Mark Chamberlain's been given that opportunity by Turki Alalshikh, he's taken it and he's changed his life. And Saturday night is just another stepping stone for him to potentially get that world title fight. Josh Padley, on the other hand, he's got a golden ticket year to make a name for himself. Everyone's going to be saying this fight week, I've never heard of him, never seen him. But in the fights I've seen, he's got good footwork. His hands are quite fast. He could cause problems. And I like that you compared this fight to Ben Whittaker and Leon Willins, because I think that's exactly it. No one knows what Josh Padley is going to bring to the table, but it's the same with Leon Willins. No one knew much about him, really. But when they meet, he could cause Chamberlain a lot of problems. I'm not saying that Chamberlain's going to lose and all that, but they're both going to go out there and deliver. And for me, this is a great way to open up a fight card because it's going to get everyone going. And yeah, it's really, at the start of it, I was like, really, is this really the best we could have got Mark Chamberlain? But as we've gone on and as I've done my research, I think this is a decent test for Mark Chamberlain as well.
I think we'd be being a little bit fussy if we wanted, six proper 50-50 difficult fights, top to bottom. As much as I could say, it would have been really nice if that was Sam Noakes instead of Josh Padley, and we could have a huge fight. But let's be real, to have 6 50-50 fights, 6 superstars on the card, it might be getting a little bit too greedy. So we'll let this one run. But like you said, Mark Chamberlain, unbelievable power. It's going to be a tough ask for anyone in there with him to last, particularly, as the rounds get higher. But who's to say it's not possible? It's boxing. There is the puncher's chance, as they as they say. Joshua Buatsi, Willy Hutchinson, another really interesting fight. Willy Hutchinson obviously fighting Craig Richards and beating him quite comfortably last time out on that 5v5 card. Joshua Buatsi comes off the back of an impressive victory over Dan Aziz, and there's a lot of bite in that fight. I know that's how Willy Hutchinson likes to make it. He was talking the most at the press conference, shouting across the stage to Buatsi, and there's still a bit of bite from whatever happened between Craig Richards and Willy Hutchinson backstage, that Joshua Buatsi's not taken a liking to. So everything about this fight on paper says this is going to be a really, really good fight, a really interesting fight, almost identical records, 12 rounds. It's going to be exciting for the WBO interim world light heavy. Harry, are you excited for this one? Is it possibly fight of the night, or is there another one you got your eyes on?
No, this is, for me, this is fight of the night. I'm a massive fan of Joshua Buatsi, and yeah, listen, everyone wrote Willy Hutchinson off against Craig Richards, but he just showed that he's got the mental strength to ignore all that, and he can take on anyone at 175. Joshua Buatsi, for me, though, is a much bigger test than Craig Richards, and Buatsi is a patient and he's a dangerous fighter. We saw that against Dan Aziz, and yeah, he's going to be completely different to Craig Richards in the fact that he's going to potentially be more patient, stay at range instead of going in. But yeah, this fight is going to be interesting between both of them because Buatsi, for me, throughout his career that I've followed, he's been quite quiet and quite respectful to his opponents. But yeah, there's no respect between these two this week, and yeah, this has definitely got the makings of fight of the night. But yeah, I think you look at the other fights on the card, this one has got the live up to be potentially not even fight of the night, but fight of the year because it's for the interim. Bivol and better be ever fighting for the interim in a couple of weeks' time. They could have a situation here where they have to vacate, and this could be for Buatsi or Hutchinson, could be a world champion by the end of 2025.
Yes, this is one I'm really looking forward to now, especially after watching the face-to-face interviews. The bit of bite there between the two of them, and they're really going at each other. They had to be pulled apart, but like you said, I think it's massive for both fighters as well. Like you said, whoever wins this is on to a world title shot. And since his loss to Lennox Clark in 2021, I think Willy Hutchinson's built himself back very strong. And to be fair, I think going a few months ago into that fight against Craig Richards, I think a lot of people had it at very best a 50-50, if not Hutchinson was probably the underdog going into that fight, and he absolutely schooled Craig Richards on that night. He gave him a bit of a boxing lesson, and I think it's going to, no, these two were very good amateurs. Buatsi, obviously an Olympian. I think it's going to make for a very good, very interesting fight. I think it'll be similar with Hutchinson trying to fight at range and pick him off with counter shots and sort of win rounds that way, whereas I feel Buatsi will have to try and probably get on the inside more, try and look to break Hutchinson down, slow him down. But I think the one benefit for Buatsi, which maybe Richards didn't have on the night, was that ability to really hurt Hutchinson, especially with body shots. We know how good Buatsi is with his body shots. I think he could really, I think a few of them will really slow you down, and then if he can pin Hutchinson into a corner. We've seen only once before, obviously, with our loss to Lennox Clark, but he was pinned into that corner, and that's where he got stopped. So I think that's what the best game plan for Buatsi. But like you said, it's going to be a very, very close fight, a very interesting fight to watch. And I'm still quite struggling to call it, to be honest, so which way I think it may go.
Yeah, it's an exciting one. It's possibility. I'm no guesses on which one I think is going to be fight of the night, but it certainly will be one of. And then Josh Kelly versus Ishmael Davis. Ishmael Davis stepping in to fight Josh Kelly last minute when Liam Smith had to pull out. And I'm going to say it quietly, I think this might be a better fight. I just think, Ishmael Davis as a matchup for Josh Kelly at it's going to be an exciting fight. When we walked into that press conference, I know we keep saying it, we went to the press conference, guys, if you didn't know. When we saw Kelly versus Smith on the board, it was kind of, like, what? Which Smith? Is it Liam Smith? Like, well, it's not Callum Smith. And we were like, who could it be? But Ishmael Davis is a really, really quality fighter, and fair play to Lee Eaton and everyone else getting in this fight, because it's a brilliant opportunity for him on the biggest stage. Josh Kelly is probably the best in his weight in Britain, or certainly there or thereabouts. But with a 15-1-1 record, he is beatable. And I think Ishmael Davis is going to go in there with the absolute belief that he can win this fight. And what that is going to mean is it's going to mean a very good fight, and it's going to mean a very close fight. Where with Liam Smith, it was the Liam Smith that's been out the ring for a year, comes off the back of a loss against Chris Eubank. There's question marks there. So really, I think this is going to be an unbelievable fight. And I don't know if Harry, I think I saw you nod. I don't know if you agree with me that this possibly is even a better fight.
Yeah, let's say it quietly. I think this is a much better fight than the Liam Smith fight. Ishmael Davis is one hell of a fighter, and they've got a lot in common. They've both fought Troy Williamson, and they've both beaten him. And Ishmael Davis, he was meant to fight on the undercard of Jack Catterall Regis Prograis in Manchester. So he was technically in camp, not coming to the end of it, but he has started his camp for that fight. So he could be in form. And I look at this fight, and yeah, I think it's a much better fight. Fair play for him for stepping in on short notice, but at the same time, who's going to turn down an opportunity to fight at Wembley Stadium, a Riyadh season card? Because it's life-changing money at the end of the day for these fighters, and it's going to be a big risk for Kelly. I'm quite surprised that it was Ishmael Davis, because Davis has a completely different style to Liam Smith that we've seen in the past. So yeah, this, like I said in the last fight, this has potentially got fight of the night written all over it. I know what fight of the night you're thinking of, Sam, but these fights here, they're just a domestic, fight up. And all these domestic fights that we've seen to have over the past couple of months, if you look back to the start of the year, we had Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark, I believe, in March. Dan Aziz Buatsi in February. These all British clashes, all English clash, and this one is incredible. And I'm very much looking forward to this. And like you said, let's quietly say it, this is a much better fight than Josh Kelly, Liam Smith.
Yeah, I think it shows the character of the man of Ishmael Davis to take this fight in a week's notice. Like you said, he had a fight lined up. Is it the end of this month or next
October.
month? It was, yeah, the end of next month. So he probably would have been training, but he'd be nowhere near deep into a camp that he'd like to be, especially for a fight of this magnitude against Josh Kelly, who is a very, very talented fighter. And fair play to Kelly for taking it as well, because I think with the switch of opponent, he's obviously been training for Liam Smith now to, in a week's time, well, less than a week's time now, be facing Ishmael Davis. He could have easily just said, oh, this is too much of a change for me, really. I'm going to need a bit more time to prepare, but fair play to him for keeping the fight going as well. I think it's fair to say with Kelly, his career probably hasn't lived up to the early hype of him coming out as an amateur, but this is probably do or die now for him in terms of his career. I think he needs a win this weekend to sort of push him on to what he wants to achieve, whether it's world titles or anything like that. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting fight. I think it's very similar to what we see from the Hutchinson Buatsi fight in terms of Kelly will look to use his skill, his fast hands, and stay out the range and sort of pick off rounds or like dominate the early rounds of the fight. But he's had a long layoff, and it depends on how his body can keep up with doing these rounds now. And if the best, like we've seen it before with Avanesian, the defeat to Avanesian, if you stick a lot of pressure on Kelly, he does not like it. And I think that's what Ishmael Davis needs to do here, is really pin it on him and tire him out as quickly as possible, and he'd have the chance of getting him out of there, I think, then. But one thing I've seen with Ishmael Davis is when he comes in throw-in, he likes to loop a lot, likes to throw his hands, loop in, and really push a lot behind him. And with someone who's as fast hands as Kelly and can really time it, if he can time it well, I think he could land a good few shots on Davis. So it'll make for an interesting fight. I think it'll be one of whether Kelly can catch that big punch first or whether he tires out and Ishmael Davis can pounce on him and really cause him some issues.
I think what's really interesting about it is because it was so late, there's going to be pretty much no time in the gym to work on this, because obviously the amount of media commitments and various other things, and obviously you're not wanting to exert yourself because you're so close to fight night. So it's very much going to be a sort of mentally planning for them and what they're going to do without necessarily being able to do that specific work in the gym. So I think, like you said, I think it would make for an interesting clash. And then the next one, like I said, it's no surprise. As a Leeds fan, Josh Warrington, I'm excited for this one. It's a bitter shame that the IBF haven't sanctioned this one as a title defense, and so that IBF belt isn't on the line for Warrington. But Cacace, if he does lose, he will lose the belt, which seems equally brutal for him. So I'm sure that he'll be being paid reasonably for it. But regardless, the IBO World Super Feathers on the line. I think this is going to be a really exciting fight. Cacace, obviously, off the back of a really impressive win against Joe Cordina. Regardless of the circumstances, it was an impressive win in one he was expected to lose. And, he's in a really strong position. And Josh Warrington, as much as I hate to admit it, it comes off the back of a really rocky part of his career. Obviously, the Lee Wood loss, the loss to Arislandi Lara. There's some Luis Alberto Lopez where he lost his IBF belt. There's a lot of difficult last fights for him, and there's a lot of miles on the clock. Coming through that Carl Frampton, Lee Selby, Kid Galahad. There's a lot of miles on that clock, and whether or not he has it in him to survive a big hitter like Cacace, we will only wait and see. I think what Josh Warrington turns up decides whether or not this is going to be a really good fight. If it's Josh Warrington of 5-6 fights ago that can bite down on his gum shield and ride through shots and throw things back, we're in for an all-timer. If it's the Josh Warrington of the last couple where he hasn't quite had the chin of past, then we might be in for a Cacace beatdown where he then gets to keep hold of his IBF belt. We will see. Ben, obviously, like I've said, this is my main event. But what do you boys make of it?
Yeah, I think this is one of the fights I don't think will go very long, because they're both fighters that just like to stay in the pocket and sort of trade. And as much as you say Cacace's power puncher, I'd say they're probably on par. They've both got the same amount of knockouts. Like, Warrington can bang, and probably deceives most people when he's coming up against them. But yeah, it's the worry, like you said, of too many miles on the clock, and has he been in too many firefights compared to Cacace? And can he really stand there for 12 rounds and really afford to trade and spend the whole night just scrapping it out? Because we've seen against Lee Wood, I think most of us had him winning, going, what was it, 6 or 7 rounds. I thought he was quite far out in front, and then he got caught with that. I don't know whether it was tiredness that got to him or a lack of concentration maybe, but he got caught with a big shot, and it was the end of the night for him from that point. Then he was dropped and he was done. But Cacace will be hoping for the same on Saturday night. He'll be looking to land that big punch. Coming off the win against Cordina, I think his stocks are his highest and his confidence will be at his highest. It wasn't the best Cordina we've seen that night. I think he was drained at that weight at that point, and that late shot definitely changed the fight. Watching it back, once he was clipped with his hands down, not prepared for it at all, it really rocked him. And I don't think he was ever going to fully recover from that. But you've got to give credit to Cacace for finishing him off. He was the big underdog going into that fight, and he got the job done, become a world champion, and he's going to want to do everything to keep that belt, and he's going to have to work really hard to beat a man like Josh Warrington.
Yeah, it's a weird one, this fight, because is it the IBF or the IBO?
IBF.
They're fighting for now?
They're fighting for the IBO.
Well,
the IBF's been not sanctioned.
It's typical that the IBF haven't put the belt on the line, because Josh Warrington's coming off a loss. If they went and watched his last fight back and realised, oh wow, actually he was winning that fight up until the stoppage, then fair enough. But obviously they haven't. It's a bit annoying for Cacace as well, but yeah, has Josh? There's a lot of questions. Has Josh Warrington got one last big fight in him? And I believe he has. Josh Warrington, like anyone from up that part of the world in Yorkshire, they're all fighters. We've seen it against Carl Frampton. We've seen it against Lee Selby. He needs to be that Josh Warrington. He needs to be that version of fighting in front of his own in Ellen Road. And I'm sure the Leeds fans are going to travel because they travel in their big numbers. But yeah, again, like Ben said, Cacace brings it. They're going to stay in the pocket. It's not going to go past 8 rounds, this fight, I don't think. I think this has potentially got Joe Laws and Stephen McKenna 3.0 written all over it because we've seen so many good fights. They're just going to, there's no feeling out processes. They're just going to bite down on their gum shields and just go for it. And this could play into the advantage of Warrington. But like I think you said, Sam, he's got a lot of mileage on the clock now. And this could be potentially just this last sort of couple of fights. But I wouldn't put Warrington out of it just yet. It'll be all action for as long as it lasts. And yeah, this is again, I've got on my notes fight of the night for the third time.
For the third time.
This has got fight of the night written all over it.
Do you know what, boys? I don't have another Leeds loss at Wembley in me. I really don't. I think, if Warrington loses that one, there's a good 50% chance you never hear from me again. I'll just go into hiding. So fingers crossed he does it, but we wait and see. Tyler Denny, Hamzah Sheeraz, European middleweight, obviously. Tyler Denny barely got his hands on the European before that he was shipped off to defend it against Hamzah Sheeraz. And Tyler Denny again goes into this one with his stock as high as it'll probably ever be, unless of course he wins this one. And Hamzah Sheeraz goes into it as one of the best middleweights in the world, waiting for a world title shot, I'm sure. Is this the best fight really we could see for Hamzah Sheeraz without it being a probably slightly rushed world title opportunity? I think so. I think it's about as high a level as you can give a European title fight. He does go into it the comfortable favourite. But like I said, that's because he is, I think, a world title level fighter. But, Tyler Denny, does he have what it takes to beat Hamzah Sheeraz? Or are we going to see another Sheeraz knockout, another Sheeraz beatdown, and then, a world title shot coming up soon?
Well, I think, yeah, you got to give him some sort of chance in this fight. He's just coming off a fight with Felix Cash that a lot of people said, who the hell's Tyler Denny? This guy ain't going to beat Felix Cash. And this fairy tale story just carries on for him. I remember doing the interview with him, and he said 10 o'clock the night before. So this was, a Monday evening or a Tuesday evening. The night before, he's been told, you know what? You're going down to Wembley, you're fighting Hamzah Sheeraz. When we arrived at that press conference, I know we've referred back to it a lot, I honestly thought he was going to say up there, Eubank Jr., Sheeraz. And I honestly thought that was the fight, and I thought that's a great fight. But I'm quite happy with this fight. Denny has beaten 6 undefeated fighters. He's just, look at his fights that he's had. Felix Cash, his last fight, I don't think anyone really gave him a chance. But he's up against Hamzah Sheeraz, who is one hell of a fighter. And Sheeraz in his last fight showed that he can come back from being under pressure. He can come back from really, from being hurt as well. And he's learned a lot from that fight against Amber Williams. And that could put him in good stead coming into this. But Tyler Denny, he's strong. He's got a strong self-belief in him. And it's all there for him. For Tyler Denny, this is all there now to upset the party for the second time. And yeah, it's an incredible rise over the last couple of years for Denny, from fighting in Wolverhampton to then fighting in his big stadium in Birmingham last time out to now fighting at Wembley Stadium. Like I said, all these fighters are going to be new to this stadium atmosphere. I think this fight has potentially got another fight of the night shock. And all the fights are fight of the nights there, but this fight has definitely got the making. But it's just going to be interesting to see how Tyler Denny takes Hamzah Sheeraz's power, because that man can punch.
Yeah, I've always find fights like this difficult to watch because they're two fighters that I really like and really enjoy. So it's almost a shame you don't want to see either man lose, because Tyler Denny, all he's done and achieved up to this point, you don't want to. He's going in a big underdog here, but as much as you'd love to see him pull off a major upset, at the same time, Hamzah Sheeraz is probably Britain's next superstar in boxing, and like there's no doubt in my mind that we'll see him in big world title fights probably late 2025. So huge opportunity for Denny, a great occasion for him, and I think his best bet will be he cannot let Hamzah Sheeraz, at the size, the power he's got to dictate the range and move about the ring as freely as he wants. I think he really, as dangerous as it is, because Shiraz has got some big hands and can really hurt you, I think he needs to stick it on his chest and really get as close to him as he can, and maybe make it not as much as a firefight, because he doesn't want to get hit with too many shots, but needs to be very smart. I think just tuck up, sit on his chest, and we've seen it in the early rounds against Hammer Williams. As good as Shiraz has been these last two fights, he blitzed Liam Williams and got a massive win against Hammer Williams out in Saudi Arabia, where he was the Queensbury captain on the 5v5, which shows how much trust that Frank Warren has in him and how much he expects of him to put that pressure on him on that night. But we seen early in that Hammer Williams fight that he got rocked with a looping shot that similar to what Denny likes to do. So there's potential there that he could hurt him, but it's going to be a difficult night, I think, for Denny, and he's really going to have to be fully concentrated and probably the best he's ever been to pick up anything against Shiraz. But yeah, really looking forward to it. Another great fight again on the card, and yeah, it's just a shame really, because it's just one of those fights where you don't want to see either man lose. But yeah, another great opportunity for both fighters.
It's like Harry said, that fairy tale story for Tyler Denny. 2 draws in his first, I think, 6 or 7 fights against journeyman. You didn't lose them, but it's not ideal. And then, 2 English middleweight title fight losses, an English title fight draw. And you're thinking, this just isn't going to happen for me. This is never going to kick on the levels I want. And then now you're looking at a European champ fighting, one of the best fighters in the world at Wembley Stadium in front of we keep saying it, at Wembley Stadium in front of 95,000. That is an opportunity that very few fighters get, and to get that after some of the setbacks he's had is just phenomenal. And then, a man who's had setbacks, a man who's come through setbacks, and an opponent that's had setbacks and come through them as well. Antony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, they've both had their time coming up at the top. They've had a setback. They've had some losses to a certain Ukrainian man who we all know and love. But they've both come back. They've got new trainers. They've got new teams. And they both seem and feel unstoppable. Daniel Dubois comes off the back of a brilliant win against Hrgovic. People can say what they want about Hrgovic and the level of Hrgovic or Jarrell Miller for that matter. But Daniel Dubois, there were question marks asked before the fight as to whether or not he was going to win it. And he did. He did win it pretty comfortably. And Antony Joshua, obviously, there were question marks with Otto Wallin and various other things, and Francis Ngannou. And he did what he had to do, got in there, got him out of there, rubbed his hands together, next one up. This is an unbelievable opportunity for Antony Joshua. He has the opportunity to get his hands on an IBF world title belt again. It leads to Tyson Fury or Usyk, depending on who wins that or where they want. It leads to possibly another undisputed fight. But the same goes for Dubois as well. If he can defend this belt, I think there will be no questions asked as to whether or not he's a legitimate world champion. Obviously, in theory, he didn't win that belt necessarily because it wasn't necessarily the belt they were fighting for with Hrgovic, because Usyk hadn't vacated, or he hadn't beaten the champion. So I think if either fighter wins this, to say they're not deserving of the world title because they didn't beat Usyk to get it seems silly to me, because they've beaten one another and that should be credit enough. But either way, regardless of what happens in this fight, regardless of who wins, who loses, I think we're going to be seeing these two boys and these two names up at the top of the heavyweight division for a little while longer, particularly Dubois. And I think it's just a brilliant moment for both. Again, Antony Joshua, just another day at Wembley, but for Daniel Dubois, it's a career moment, a career maker, a piece of history. And Ben, what are you saying? What are you making of this one?
It's massive. I cannot wait to watch this now. The whole build up. There's a bit of tension between the two of them. There's a lot of been said about sparring gone years back, and Dubois really hurting AJ, and he seems to have really taken confidence from her. You can see that but the both of them are fighters reborn recently since the whole change up they've both made over recent years. Looking at Joshua after the two Usyk defeats, who kind of struggling to see where he was going, what Joshua was sort of left there, but he's just come back and he looks at probably the best we've seen him now. He against Otto Wallin, someone who took Fury, caused Fury a lot of issues, and he battered him on the night, really, with big power shots, really hurt Otto Wallin, and he just didn't want to know in the end, and he got the stoppage. He went on then to Francis Ngannou, who took Fury again the whole 10 rounds, I think it was, and flatlined him, just made it look easy, and just showed how much power he's got. In terms of Dubois, obviously there's always been that criticism there of Eddie Hearn's been digging at him a lot, calling him a quitter with the Joe Joyce loss, and then the Usyk loss. As good as he done against Usyk, people were saying he could have got up from that knockdown and chose not to. So there's always that worry there that is that at the back of his mind still, that ability to quit in fights, especially against someone who bangs as hard as AJ. But Dubois himself, he's come back. That win against Miller, which was a really tough test for him, and showed a bit of grit in it and had to really dig and fight through. And then the same again against Hrgovic. He got caught a lot early in the rounds with some big right hands. He fought through that. It's a different Dubois to what we've seen before, I think, and he's got a lot of confidence going into this, and he really thinks that he can hurt AJ and cause him issues. And if he can pull it off, like we're saying, is if he's the underdog really, but he's going in as the champion, and he's probably not getting as much respect as he maybe deserves, but he's the one with the belt, he's the one defending. Massive occasion for him at Wembley, and we probably haven't stopped to think if he can pull it off as much as we've been talking over recent years for a Fury and Joshua fight. It could be Dubois and Fury as the big British clash that we end up seeing, and it could be undisputed, or you could even get the rematch with Usyk. Yeah, it's a massive fight for both men, and it's a real trajectory for their career of where they're going to go, I think. In terms of how the fight plays out, Joshua has got the big overhand right, whereas Dubois, I think, has got the best jab, probably at heavyweight, or at least one of the best jabs at heavyweight. So it's who can sort of dictate that fight and who can really let the other one know, right, I'm the one in control of this fight. But I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be massive in front of 95,000 people. The atmosphere is going to be amazing in there. Yeah, really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I like the training, the trainers they've both got now. Don Charles with Daniel Dubois, I think is going to get the best out of him. And, Antony Joshua and Ben Davidson, for me, that's the best partnership in boxing. He's changed Antony Joshua's career completely. Going back to that Otto Wallin fight, there were so many question marks on both of them really on that night, because obviously Dubois fought Miller earlier in the night, and a lot of them, for me, if Dubois was looking like the old Dubois against Usyk, where the fight was there to win, but he just couldn't get over the line, and he showed us that he can. And then against Hrgovic, my God, what a performance that was. He obviously took a lot of shots. Can he take those shots against a fighter like Antony Joshua? I don't know, but this is a hell of a fight. For me, there's more pressure on Antony Joshua to deliver, because the non-boxing fans, because AJ gets everyone watching, everyone talking. Bamps is talking about it, and he's not even a boxing fan. And they don't know who Daniel Dubois is. So there's no pressure on Dubois in this fight, I don't think. He's the world champion and all that. But yeah, there's so much. Everyone's saying AJ's going to win in my eyes, and I think AJ will win. But he's done that walk so many times, Antony Joshua. He's done that walk when, Josh Padley and Mark Chamberlain are going to fight. He's fought in Wembley when there was hardly anyone in the stadium. 3 years later, he then fought Vladimir Klitschko in for me, the fight that really got me into boxing that night was just incredible. That uppercut, oh wow. And then he's fought Povetkin there. He's gone to the Principality Stadium back-to-back fight nights against Parker and Takam. He's been at that big stadium level, Antony Joshua, for a number of times now. Tottenham with Usyk. Dubois has been at the stadium level. Obviously, he was at Tottenham when he fought Kevin Lerena. He had problems in that fight, Dubois. And then obviously he went over to Poland and fought Alexander Usyk, where I honestly thought that punch that he hit to the body was on the belt line and I thought was legal, but there we go. But yeah, this fight for me, as the months and months have gone on, as I was coming back from North Wales on Saturday, I was thinking to myself, this fight is just, when you read into it more and more and you think about it, it's actually a really, really good domestic fight. And you look back to some of the best stadium fights we've had over the last couple of years. Fury's fought Chisora and Dillian White. For me, this is the best all British world title fight we've had in this country for a very, very long time. And yeah, I think the fight will start slowly. I think Dubois will show AJ some problems early. I think Dubois is not going to be the sort of fighter that's going to wait. I think AJ is going to be the more patient, more keep at range and see what's happening. And then by rounds 3 or 4, is going to really catch fire. And I think the fight's going to be won or lost as well in fight week, because we all know that Dubois isn't the biggest of talkers, and how much is that going to take out of him? Fight week started yesterday. Interviews are flying in now. Got the grand arrivals today. They're going to have to talk more about the fight. AJ's been there. He's done it. And yeah, like I said, I just can't wait for this fight. I can't believe how quick it's come around as well. It just feels like only a couple of weeks ago we were up in Wembley when they announced it. But yeah, it's just incredible.
I couldn't have said it better. I won't even, partly because we've been going on a little while now, so much so that my light switched off. So that shows shows just how good this card is. There's so much to talk about, and so Harry's favorite part of the week, the boxing news predictions. The point where we have to put ourselves up to look stupid or look genius or both simultaneously. We will see Mark Chamberlain versus Josh Padley, lightweight 10-rounder. Nice, quick, easy one for me. Chamberlain KO, by far the most likely scenario. I presume both you boys agree with me. Start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I think we're all going the same. Chamberlain by knockout. The concern for me was Padley, watching him just drop his hands a bit too low at times, I think. So I can see a left hook coming from Chamberlain to stop this fight.
Yeah, I completely agree, but let's not write Josh Padley out completely. He's got a golden ticket to go there on Saturday night and potentially upset the cards. And he could do it, but I don't think he can do it. And I've got Chamberlain by knockout.
Joshua Buatsi, Willy Hutchinson, light heavyweight 12-rounder. I think it's a tough one. I'm going to go for Buatsi points decision, I think. But I'm not confident on that. What about you, Harry?
I'm going to go. I had it written down. I'm trying to look for my predictions because I want to win. Ben takes this so seriously, so I've written down my predictions. I think Buatsi's going to stop him. I think, and I said it the last time around with Craig Richards. I thought we're seeing a different type of fighter fight Willy Hutchinson, and yeah, I think Joshua Buatsi's going to make Willy pay for all the stuff he said in the past, and that's by stopping him in the late rounds, round 9. I think he's going to stop him.
Yeah, this was really difficult. I was really torn because I could see either fighter winning here, but the way I've gone with it, I think Hutchinson will pick up a couple of early rounds, but I think Buatsi's power could really slow him down, and I think he'll nick it. In the end, I think it'll be close, but I've gone Buatsi points.
And then Anthony Cacace versus Josh Warrington, super featherweight 12-rounder. I'll start with you, Harry, so you can't just copy us. What's your prediction for this one?
I really, really like Josh Warrington. I think for me, he's one of those characters in British boxing where he just represents everyone, don't he? He's like a proper man, and he's just an incredible bloke. So I believe Warrington wins. But like we said, this fight doesn't go the distance. And I think Josh Warrington gets a knockout win. And then he reignites his career, and finally, those Leeds fans who have been following Joshua Warrington all around the country will get an an away day where they either go to New York or Las Vegas. Joshua Warrington, knockout, round 7.
That's a bold claim. What about you, Ben?
I think this is a true 50-50, and I think whoever lands that big punch first will win. But I think that big punch is going to come from Cacace, so I'm going for Cacace by stoppage.
My head is saying that this might not go the way I want it to, but who in the world listens to their head? My heart is saying Josh Warrington, but I'm going to say via points decision. I think it's going to be one of those fights where they take so much out of themselves and each other, but don't get the finish that there's just not the power in the arms to knock each other out. So you just end up with 36 minutes of people hitting lumps out of each other without either of them hitting the canvas. Josh Kelly, Ishmael Davis, 12 rounder. I think this is at super welterweight, but I'm not sure. I think BoxRec has it as a middleweight, but I thought it was the super welterweight, and I certainly thought that of both their weight classes. So we'll see if that gets updated, but we'll say it's a super welterweight. Ben, what's your prediction for this one?
Another one that's difficult to predict, but I think it depends how prepared Josh Kelly is for it and how he's gonna, after a long time out of the ring, deal with pressure from Ishmael Davis. But I'm gonna go for Kelly points decision on this one.
Yeah, I'm going the same.
Yeah, same. I think, Josh Kelly, he's been in his training camp for a long time. Made Ishmael Davis, listen, I think the way he wins this fight is by stoppage. I think he has to go for it, because I doubt he's going to be in top condition because he's coming off a short notice. But yeah, Josh Kelly by points for me.
See, this is now starting to shape up, having known what's most likely for the second two, that me and Harry have got the horrendous situation of relying on leads to get a win, which is never, ever in the history of life ever gone well for anyone. Hamzah Sheeraz, Tyler Denny, middleweight 12-rounder. It's a Sheeraz knockout, I think, is comfortably the most likely. It's not a guarantee, but it's comfortably the most likely scenario, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to see it, but I think it's going to be Sheeraz stoppage as well.
Yeah, listen, Tyler Denny for me, when he beat Felix Cash, he became one of my favourite fighters. But yeah, he's up against one hell of a fighter. Like Ben said earlier in the podcast, he's definitely one of the next big stars of British boxing. And yeah, I think Hamzah Sheeraz's reach is going to be probably the way he wins this fight, and I believe he's going to win via a knockout. I think a late knockout, though. I think Denny could cause him problems, but those problems will probably take it out of him a little bit. And yeah, Sheeraz knockout, round 10.
And then Daniel Dubois, Antony Joshua, the main event, the big one. This is the one that matters that little bit more in terms of the predictions. It's two men that have got well over 40 knockouts between the two of them, and I don't see this one being any different. I think whoever wins it will be by knockout, and I think it's gonna be Antony Joshua.
Yeah, Antony Joshua by knockout, round 6.
I want to see another one of these cards at Wembley, so I'm just going to go for a draw.
Fair enough.
I'm
I thought you were actually going for it then.
Hang on a minute. When Ben says, I'm going to go for a draw, we can let him off and go for his first prediction. I thought it was what you say first.
Nah, to be fair, I haven't won a prediction in weeks, I think, so I'm taking this one. I need to try and win this one. My concern, I very like the look of Dubois and his confidence, but my concern is we've seen him in these last two fights, especially against Hrgovic. He got caught way too many times with that right hand, and when you get caught like that against AJ, not many people survive them. So I think AJ gets the stoppage. I can't see it going very far. I think he stops in before 8 rounds. I think any further than 8 rounds, I'd be very shocked.
Well, there you go. You have it. Our predictions, our full preview. We're bang on the hour mark. It's been many, many, many months since we've done an hour-long episode. So consider that our treat to you guys for this major event. So thank you all for listening. If anyone is still listening now, thank you all for listening and for paying attention. Obviously, looking forward to Saturday night. Looking forward to a brilliant fight. Check out any of the other content on our channel, interviews. Maybe have a look back at the interviews we did with Hamzah Sheeraz and Tyler Denny back at the press conference. Have a look at that, see who you think's going to win that fight. And other than that, we thank you all for listening. Follow us on Twitter, Spotify for the audio episodes, etc. And we'll see you all next week for the 50th episode of the Puncher's Chance podcast. Thank you guys for listening.
Puncher's Chance. Puncher's Chance podcast.